here's a comment that I want to address. I think this made me smile, so I'm going to share it with the rest of the Brotherhood of the Hair Loss. I did that video called Norwood 3, Should I Try Modern College Cut Again, but modified? And I was very pleased with the results. I mean, kind of a mixed bag. I think a lot of people really like my hair the way it is. If I were to just get a trim and keep it this length, everyone is agreeing that the length on top, which is about 2.5 inches, and is, what is it called, like texturized or something? Everyone's agreeing on that. The question was, should I take this down to a 2 on the sides and the back with a disconnected part? A lot of people says, yes, do it, it'll be great. Others says, but you look fine just as you are. And this was one of the people on that camp, and that's our friend Unchained Romeo. He said this, quote, "You look really good as it is now, Nick. I'd say keep it as it is now. You look like a cool dad. I think it goes more with who you are, but whatever makes you happy, bro." End quote. Thank you for that, Unchained Romeo. So I just want to talk about that for a moment. It's funny because most of you are younger than me. Most of you are in high school or like early 20s, and you're not in dad mode, you know? And it's funny because I think for me, looking back to when I was your age, back when I was in high school, back when I was in my early 20s, it was always important to me that as I grew older, that I would still be cool. So you can imagine a compliment like that from me, from Unchained Romeo, that goes a long way, because that's something I'm trying to accomplish. I realized in high school, I would notice that a lot of people who were in their 30s, it's like they got stuck in a certain year. So like, the theory is, I have a theory that a lot of people, a lot of adults get stuck in a certain year, and then culturally, they don't really move past that. And the theory is that often happens with whatever year they were either in high school or in college, and then they just kind of freeze. Or maybe when they got married, times just change and they freeze right there. So for me, I graduated high school in '99, so maybe in theory, a 36-and-a-half-year-old would still look like he's trapped in the late 90s or the early 2000s. And, you know, for me, I think there's parts of that. I mean, I'm wearing an Old Navy shirt, which was pretty cool and trendy when I was in high school, and then I've got my Gap shirt, and you know, those are my brands: Gap, Old Navy, American Eagle. Those make me feel like, okay, this is part of my identity. And you know, in some ways, I will always embrace the late 90s for those things. But it was very important for me that I moved on, and culturally that I'm moving on, and so you know, I think when it comes to being like an adult in your 30s, being a dad, there's this uncoolness that can set in by default for a lot of people. And I think it's part of my identity to always evolve with that. And Maxwell Smart had pointed this out in a recent comment where I was talking about being a balding dad, vegan hipster, or whatever I said. You know, that is part of my identity. I never said it out loud and never realized it. And even, it was funny because I saw this like 20-year-old guy at a coffee shop, and he recognized me as a hipster, and I was thinking he was the hipster. But really, if it was a hipster contest, I would have won. And I didn't think about that. Maxwell Smart had commented and said that as far as being a hipster, a lot of it is being aware of how you look physically and that sort of thing. And that's always been a part of who I am. I've said before, I always care about being relevant. Being relevant is very important to me. Being the greatest, being the coolest, not so much, but being relevant. Because, and I said before, I don't have to be the best looking guy. I can be an average looking guy, but if I'm relevant and I know how to connect and communicate with people, then that's what matters. So for me, I never wanted to be this uncool dad. Like, that'd be one of the worst things, to be this uncool looking dad. I want to be a cool dad, because you're still cool. You're still cool, even if you're a dad, and you can look that way and still look good for your mid-30s. And man, in 6 months, I'll be in my late 30s, actually. So anyway, thanks for the compliment. That's part of my identity. I appreciate that. I appreciate your involvement in that. So, I guess the question for you is, have you thought about this? As a teenager or as someone in your early 20s, have you thought about how you are going to eventually get to where I am? You're going to be in your mid-30s. You're going to be married and have kids. How important is it to you that you are still cool, or are you just going to stop caring? You know, and especially as we lose our hair, that's another thing to consider. because I'm lucky to have as much hair as I have. I really never thought I'd have this much where I am in this stage in life. And so that's going to affect your looks again. But even then, I've talked many times, and even this week, about how, but if you choose for hair loss not to be seen as an imperfection, if you just embrace that as part of the whole man experience, that it's normal for men to lose their hair, then it's not a negative thing anyway. You can embrace the coolness of being a dad and looking like a dad. And then that's the thing too. I mean, some of you are going to be losing enough hair in your early 20s to where you may look as mature as a dad is, even if you're not a dad. You're going to be the guy that's buzzing his hair off with the beard, which is a very cool look these days. Never in the history of the world has it been more acceptable and really just cool to look that way. You know, it's not a step down. It's not a step down to shave your head and have a beard. That's actually kind of, if anything, in a way cooler than keeping your hair and not being able to grow a beard. I think we have to keep that in mind as far as what is actually cool as we sort all this out. As we're trying to sort out what is cool as it relates to hair loss. So, this is my jumping off point for that. You take it away here in the comments. Tell me more things that come to mind when you think of, as we're saying, what is cool versus having hair, having a shaved head, or having a beard. Maybe that's kind of the question too I should ask. What is cooler? To still have most of your hair at 36 and to be, you know, looking like I do? Or is it cooler to have a beard and a shaved head? Really, that's not a question for me just now. It's a question for men. I don't care if you're 21 or if you're 36 and a half. What's cooler? To have hair or to like be the rebel that buzzes off your hair and has the cool beard? I think that our society gives more credibility to the buzz cut and the beard. I think that is edgier, it's cooler, and it's more relevant. And here I am, the guy talking about that I want to be relevant. Anyway, I think there's a lot that we need to unpack. Help me unpack in the comments.